parked us successfully. But a paved surface, you minimizing that impact, and then especially thinking about the context of the creek. And to think ahead 20 years from now, when we have a flourishing of aquatic habitat again, in South Scappoose Creek, and hopefully North Scappoose Creek. And that can all happen if we're thoughtful in this whole process, and everybody benefits long-term from doing those kinds of things. So anyway, that's my point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Do we have any additional public comment tonight? Okay, we will move on. So tonight we're gonna, our first order of business is going to be discussing Grabhorn. We have Dave Suka with Public Works, who is going to help us understand some of the more of the site considerations to help us make a very thoughtful and informed decision tonight. So Dave, would you like to start?
Well, I really don't have anything planned or anything to just talk about in particular. I'm here to answer questions and talk about history of how we got to where we are. I know that obviously this has been a contentious subject moving on through the process, but I'm here to listen, in all honesty, to see where you guys are at with things and what feedback I can give to help guide that discussion. There's some factors, I think, in the preliminary designs that everybody has seen that is understandably two-dimensional. Nobody's added that third dimension to it yet of the depth, and the elevation change over the property is about 11 to 13 feet, depending on where you're factoring. When you're looking at ball fields and different dynamics, that really factors into it in a big way to a large facelift. If you were going to go with like a dual field scenario based on some of the plans shown to you guys, I think one of those options, I don't remember which one, that would require a 10-foot retaining wall at the back of the backstops. That's a huge facelift to that property that makes it very hard to function. There's virtually no seating and things. So I just want everybody to understand what we're working with for a palette to try to build this from. So
I appreciate
help.
Yes, it does. It does help. And then Mr. Mayor, would you also comment on fields?
Thank you, Joe Backus, Scappoose. I would just really consider learning and working more with the school district before the November bond. We can try to find out what their thought process is at the old middle school. If their bond passes, they've talked sports complex, and it could be many fields, it could be courts, it could be various things that might determine what we would want to do. We don't want to do too many of one thing and miss out on others. So it's not that far away. I mean, they'll have conceptual plans probably and thoughts going in the next couple months. So I'd be very curious to see what their plans are there. I don't really think you need to start all over, but things have changed quite a bit in the last year or two since those designs were, and with the mid school. I think you kind of need to, like with Dave's information, if there is that much cut, what can go in there and not have that much of a cut and still be usable. But I would really, and we've been working with the school district, and I think Megan is a representative for them, and that she's on the bond committee. She'll know a lot of what they're planning to do at the mid school, but I would really consider seeing that, because you could all of a sudden have 3 big fields, or if they do both fields at the mid school, you may not need 4 fields.
Okay. And then, so the bond will go up in November?
Right now, their plan is to put it up in November.
Okay.
And their concept is to build a new mid school over at the high school and then decide what they're going to do with the old mid school. But they've kind of got an idea what they want to do with the whole property around it.
Okay. Go ahead, Paul.
Mr. Mayor. So firstly, we've talked for years now on a shared use agreement. We haven't gotten anywhere with it as far as I know. So basically any kind of agreement that said, this is the way that we could both share fields with the school district and public fields. So that's number one. Where are we with that? And secondarily, I agree with you, what you just said, but we really don't have much visibility with what's going on with the school. I mean, we're kind of just sitting here, and So should we engage Counselor Greisen, or do we wait to hear what she has to say? Or do we reach out to the school district? What should we do?
On that behalf, I will find out. I'll talk to her and see what they've come out with and see if she's the one that can give us that information or if we need to reach out. I think they're still in the beginning stages of how much information they want to publicize about that facility, because that's not what their plan. I mean, their bond is to build a new school. So how far will they know? What will they know they're going to do at the mid school? I don't know when that will be determined, but I'll find out from Megan. And the shared use agreement, we have brought that up with them and we've been trying to pursue that. They are very busy, obviously, with their bond advisory group and everything to set up those meetings. But Megan did just email us. They do have a new way to use their fields. They have online, you can sign up and use their fields for community members and stuff. So they're trying to work on that. But that's another one we are pushing for you guys. I know that was one of your goals. And we've been really working hard. We're just not getting the meeting set up. They're not responding real well on it. Their request.
Yeah. I have two thoughts. Go ahead, Mike. I'll let you go first. Number one, Terry, I believe that you said that Little League is currently not playing on the city-owned baseball fields right now, and they are currently actually using the middle school consistently, correct? Great.
Hasn't been a game.
So that is something that to be considered, is that they have actually been amenable to Little League. Number two, I mean, something to consider too, that a shared use agreement might sound initially like intimidating, like with the school district. So we might scale it down a little bit and say, how can we, and maybe you've already navigated this. The feedback that we got from softball and soccer is that it was very hard to connect with anybody and they would really only allow for one-off. So it was hard to plan consistent games in the field. And so maybe we say, how about we instead of just assuming that the city will just have access to your fields 100% of the time, maybe we just figure out ways to reserve fields for 2 months at a time for an entire.
That's not how the shared agreement works.
Okay.
So how it works is that you would set your priorities. A shared use agreement is basically an agreement. So you'd come to the table and say, okay, school gets the top priority, and then the town gets these priorities. Fine, we need it in this period. Well, we'd like it in this period. Well, you could have it in these things. So it is actually not as like kind of it'd like be us coming to a table and say, well, we'd like Tuesday and Thursdays for these months.
Right.
And that could be your shared use agreement.
Yeah.
It's very, very general, and then you can make the rules as you go. You can kind of say, okay, these seasons are coming up or whatever, 2 seasons down the road.
Can I ask a clarifying?
Yes.
Well, actually, I think Mike's, okay. All right, sorry.
Go ahead, Isaac.
I guess my question is briefly to Paul is, I guess, how do you see the role of the city in a shared use agreement? Because we don't administer the sports teams. And typically when I see those, they're with a parks recreation where they're administering a program. And so I guess maybe I'm not seeing how the city role in this aligns with that, because we wouldn't be using the fields.
Right. So the Portland Parks has a shared use agreement with the school district. So now I'm not exactly sure how the Parks District or the Portland Parks works with the leagues. So, but I would assume it'd be somewhat similar. So if the leagues right now are currently using Veterans Park or whatever, is that like, not? Well, what before, did they sign up for that, or how did that work? Like,
Well, they were all Little League.
yep.
All the games. Anderson. The way that I think that we're being lucky is they quit using that Anderson field for softball. We've been fortunate enough to have much every Saturday to do makeup games.
Paul, I know like Portland or Hillsborough Park, their shared use agreement, they run all the little leagues or the group programs, park and rec baseball. And so they'll have that shared use so they can use their parks and then use school parks as well. just like Little League has an agreement with the school district. We go in and we fill out at the beginning of the year a use agreement. We book every field, how many hours, how many nights, for how many months, and we get first right of refusal on them because, or Little League does, because they paid for most of them. And then other groups will come in after that. And so they do have use agreements anybody can go sign. What I'm thinking on the city is that we can help promote those. If a group, a youth, adult women's soccer team wants to have a team, we can help promote that. Or if we want to have city league basketball and we sponsor, a league. St. Helens used to do that, city league softball, city league basketball. That's where I think a shared use agreement through the city might, be beneficial, but they do have agreements.
Mike, I want to, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
There you
Okay. I was just going to say, I think there's a great conversation. There's probably a lot of potential for a joint use, but I think as far as Grabhorn goes, a date we need to kind of etch in the back of our mind is April. April's when the city needs to move forward with an application for a grant, which is honestly going to the only way they're financially going to be able to develop that park. And they have $750,000 worth of match, which is what the city paid. And there's only so many years that you can go after a state lottery grant. And so given that, and given the big questions that exist as far as slope and do you want a baseball field or a softball field, I think what we might want to consider is kind of what we did in Concomly, which was go after a grant to build those infrastructure things that really are critical to the park, like a restroom facility, a parking area, a trail. And we could do all those things. And I don't think anybody disagrees that those things need to occur. And that means that would give Isaac an opportunity to begin moving forward with that. And we could call the larger field phase 2 and maybe identify we could just for the sake of the grant, you could say in phase 2, we're going to build some sport fields up above, but the main thing is it gets you in and take advantage of that grant money, which is it's only, you can only use it requires 50% match, and you can only use that 750 for probably a year or maybe another year after that. But there's no guarantee you're going to get it, so you want to give yourself a couple years. So I just think that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
So.
Have other thoughts? JJ?
I completely agree with Mike. I think that it was a lot of work to get the Grabhorn property. It's important for us to take advantage of these grants, seeing as we have no money really for parks outside of what Public Works provides us. So we can always add more later. The same argument could be made for Chapman Landing, where we have these great plans, but there are a number of things that have to be accomplished to actually implement them. And so if there's money, and I'm just speaking from personal experience, go get the money. Get the money and it will work out.
Mike, just for clarity, I thought it was 2026 was so we have, it's.
But you still need time. You still need time.
Oh, I understood, but looking at Dave's, so for instance, again, I agree with Mike, but if we did ball fields, for instance, it is, you're gonna have to cut 10 feet away, kind of against the trees, so to speak, to level out that field. Any work that's done would probably be done after that, because that's a major, it looks like quite a large undertaking, Dave, from cutting all that field away and flattening that area. So I guess that's kind of only my concern, is that could you do some makeshift stuff around? Yeah.
Well, so on that, Michael and I were talking about this a little bit ago. What we're kind of thinking is if we know the direction is going to be athletic fields of some type, whether it's soccer, baseball, softball, is irrelevant. What you do is you design the footprint of where that's going to sit and grade it and do the excavation to at least level it off where it could be used for recreational soccer. Maybe it's not a formal field yet, but they could still go out and stripe it and the youth could use it for whatever. And it's green space. So you've done your dirt work and your preliminary upfit for it, get your parking lots in place, get all that infrastructure in place. And then when you're financially ready or the community has dictated the need a little better, you build either the ball field or a softball field or, whatever that is, but you get that groundwork kind of done now, knowing that we want to level off certain footprint of it. And then try to do that in a way that doesn't impact the property in a negative way with the retaining walls and things. Cause I think that's the last thing anybody really wants to see out there is a bunch of big concrete walls and seating, but it's just
You could probably do that dirt work as part of the grant.
that's my thoughts is
Right.
you're telling the state that you're creating just soccer fields. We're just grading this off with a 1% slope for soccer fields at this time. And then somewhere down the road, you've utilized that grant. And if you feel the need for the ball fields, then we just fundraise for the backstops and a little bit of infield work. The groundwork is already done and behind you. So you're ahead of the game.
So we did a lot of work on outreach, and we heard pretty strongly that we needed softball fields and soccer field.
Yes.
Has that changed besides what could happen at the school?
It was they did need it because they were having a hard time accessing the school fields. So if the fields, because some of them are not turfed, I mean, the problem is if we like the current little league fields are not usable. I mean, that's the problem with the majority of our fields right now, right? Is they're not usable because of the rain. And so like the challenge is that some of the areas aren't turfed. The softball field did not have access. The softball girls did not have access during the pandemic because it was school owned. And the softball girls were having a harder time because they are trying to share fields with soccer and they both share seasons. And so that's where those were the biggest hangups. It wasn't that we absolutely had no other choice but to put fields in Grabhorn. It was that gave it gave more consistent access. But if the school is creating a major field area and we fundraise to turf some of the fields that we currently have, we might be able to manage that.
I do, Little League doesn't even have softball this year. They didn't have enough girls to even participate. So they've made them go to St. Helens and combine with their Parks and Rec. So we have a couple travel teams, but it's partly because they don't have the fields or the parents, the people that want to get involved. So I would really look at multi-use field versus a softball dedicated. Multi-use, like a turfed infield type field, and softball, first right of refusal if they've got the teams and the need, but then anybody can use it. But they do need fields, but at the same time, so does baseball. I mean, there's 10 teams fighting for 2 fields. And they can't even use them right now. But I think multi-use is kind of a better need right now because you got kickball, Special Olympics, you got groups, you got all sorts of. You could have men's softball, men's league softball. Kind of a multi-use would be, I think, more advantageous.
Yes, Dave, real quick. Sure. So can you tell us what you think on that? On this actual area, the pros and cons around turf, especially with regards to water and drainage and, the positives, of course, and then also the negatives with regards to Scappoose Creek.
We'll try. So I've built a few turf fields in my career. I've never seen this field flood other than down where the lower portion and the wetlands are. So we would definitely need to be above that. Because if that were to go underwater, you have 2 things. One, you've got the rubber floating away to the creek. The other would be as if sediment gets laden into there, the field's rendered useless and you got to start over because there's a rock section underneath that rubber that all that water drains into and then goes away, matrix of pipes and things. So it could work. I mean, it is feasible to have it there, but is that for soccer or is that for baseball or, what are you going to find for a user? To build off the mayor's comments, about a year ago, we had a meeting with the school district where we talked about fields and field demand. And they had mentioned to us at the time that not all of their softball fields were even being utilized. That they actually had 1 additional softball field within their realm over above baseball fields within the community. So I guess to me, I would verify before we build any ball fields of any type that there's truly a need for it. And it sounds like partnering with the school, moving forward with what their future plans are is going to be a key component to that. So once again, for our sake, I think if we just go in and start leveling the land and building a green space, as Mayor said, funny that he mentioned kickball, because that's exactly where my brain was going, is any activity where people just want to use a nice level field be super advantageous. And then in the future, if there truly is a demand for any type of specific ball field, we're ready to go to build it. So I don't know that I answered your question, Paul, but I mean, I think turf could work there.
It's
I
just
couldn't
been,
swear
it's
to
just
it.
been brought up, and at the same time digging away 10 feet, you know, even lower. And then, you know, with the sediment concerns, I was just interested in your opinion.
But I think you would probably stay above the water table. However, a few years ago in 2019, I mean, we saw the south field of Veterans go underwater. I mean, all the way up to the backstop, that thing was underwater. So I can't predict what Mother Nature is going to do. Any big event could cause problems there, but turf is an option in the future.
During the GPAC, Brian Hogan and I did meet with a field contractor, and he actually said that there's some turf options that don't use the rubber pellets. Like they're becoming more and more green. There's like some that use like olive pits and just really interesting things. So just as I mean, when we go to build this
Right.
in the future, like who knows what could be possible at that point as well.
The other thing that we really haven't got into very heavy is the impacts of the floodplain. But most of the field is going to be in the no rise, no change kind of. I mean, everything has to be a cut fill balance. So depending on where that sits, you may not even have enough dirt to raise it high enough because you can't bring anything in. So that's where it gets really tricky. This is a unique challenge to fit anything on of that type.
Jeanette?
I was just wondering, the cost between turf and grass as far as maintenance, have we considered that as well?
I can tell you that turf, does show there's quite a bit of savings just in maintenance. It's a lot more to build. And then you do have to replace it after a certain amount of time, at least parts. But every park I've seen built in the last 10, 15 years is going to turf. And Hillsborough stadiums, Hillsborough is just putting a few more in, and they're all artificial turf. They're playing right now. Scappoose went to Astoria to play on their turf field. I mean, you can play all year long. You can play in the middle of the winter. So a lot of people are using them. The high school just bought a thing that brooms it. And I'm sure they can, you can use it. You pull it behind a trailer and you just, or a truck, and you just pop up the little black pellets or whatever they're using. I think it might be even recycled Nike shoes. But the maintenance, there is a way to show the amount of savings that you can incur.
How much does it cost to build one?
I think the high school football field was a little over $1 million, 1 point some million. That is field turf, kind of the top of the line stuff. We offered the city of Scappoose 110,000 to turf both infields at Veterans when it started. Tim Lohman, 110,000. It would have been about 50,000 in infield, and they didn't want it because of the concerns. It was pretty new at the time. Concerns of floating into the creek, 120 degrees in the summer. Who's going to be around to replace it when it needs to be replaced? But if you can just turf an infield, and that allows you to play a lot more, because in the outfield, it can be grass, it can be wet, not as big a deal. A lot of fields are doing that. But at the time, we were looking at 50,000 to do an infield.
So that's been
I doubled.
my experience with turf. I mean, you're talking $1 million, boom, just build it. And this grant we're talking about is about $750,000. And I think that's a great idea for phase 2. But I think if we can add the cost of doing all the groundwork and using it for multi-purpose community activities, highlight that we don't have any girls softball fields. I mean, that you have to put yourself in the funders. You have to kind of look at what they're going to be looking for. And if you go in and say, hey, we need a field for our girls, they don't have anywhere, and this is going to be phase 1, and phase 2 we're going to go after a turf and you talk about the multi-purpose uses. I think you'd have a really good chance, but you know, realistically, your restroom's gonna be 150 to 200,000, parking lot's another 150 to 200,000, trails another 100,000, grading's 200,000. There's 750 right there.
Harry?
Be a good first step.
Also, I don't think the soccer field has a dedicated field either.
Yeah,
So I mean, multi-use of that area is
exactly.
the way to go.
We start just getting the field ready, and then if we're able to fundraise or go after another grant in the future, you let the cities come some extra money, you probably,
Check.
I would love to hear thoughts on Mike's, more thoughts on Mike's suggestion.
I have one question on it. Then are the plans, you pretty much know where the bathroom would go, where some parking would go with any plan or the trail. So if needed to get something done, those are things that you would have a pretty good idea without affecting the whole design of the park.
Yes and no. Obviously, there's some controversy over where a parking lot should go. We would need to figure that out to, or, 'cause obviously you don't want to stick a bathroom out there that isn't or a parking lot stuff. So obviously all of that would have to be sorted out. But just as an FYI, I did a little research there, and to replace a turf field, so just to strip it off and put down new with all the base, is $500,000 all by itself. So it probably is $1 million investment.
And then how often does that need to be done?
I hadn't got that far. I went,
Okay.
And Dave, what's the cost to maintain that over the 10-year period that it would last?
yeah, see, I don't know. I mean,
Fertilizer,
we don't
cutting
maintain-
grass.
I wouldn't know what those costs are, but I think
Right.
it's gonna depend on how hard it's used, obviously.
But like with like an infield, they'll replace just a circle around the pitcher's mound or around the home plate, the high use stuff. And you can just do bits and parts because the rest of it isn't being used as much. But if you're replacing a whole football field, a whole soccer field, then it's quite a bit.
That was just to build a soccer field. That was not cheap.
So Dave, I'm sure you heard the feedback, but if you haven't, when we first looked at the designs with the fields, the one thing was that the soccer field was basically right against, road is that, Watts?
Yeah, I believe.
Smith.
Smith Road. So basically the ball would be, constantly going in across the road there. That was where the thought of shifting everything over south and then putting the parking lot closer to the Smith Road kind of came from. That was just,
think that
it's
just-
not our feedback, Mike. This is just personally what we heard.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. And I think for, that was a preliminary design to get something rolling on that project. We anticipated a fence, to catch that ball, but if we need to move it, we need to move it, whatever. Obviously, we didn't know for a fact that there was wetlands down there either. Obviously, that's gonna have to be mitigated and compensated. And I don't know how that's gonna factor into the elevation for that down there too, if you can even slide the field quite that far down, or if it needs to go up. I mean, there's still a lot of hurdles to work through here. The biggest thing is, I think, getting the community to share the vision, and if there's been anything I've heard through watching all of your meetings and stuff, is there's not a common vision quite yet. It sounds like to me we're homing in on one, which is great. I'm open to whatever the community benefits from. I'm not partial either way. I mean, I don't really want to see a park with a bunch of massive retaining walls and no seating. That just not excited about that myself. But
JJ?
So I had a question about timing. I know that Mike is very anxious that we get this grant done sooner than later and apply for it. So what are the benefits of getting it done sooner as opposed to putting it off?
it is that you have you're not gonna, there's no guarantee you're gonna get it funded. There's a lot, it's a statewide competition, and sometimes you don't get it funded the first year, you might have to go the second year. The other benefit is you can get it funded, and then in a couple of years, you can go get another follow-up fund. And the neat thing about this program is it's funded by the lottery, so it's really it's a really great program that's available every year, and if you wait, then you're missing an opportunity.
So are you saying that you could actually apply for it this year or within that first year, that 2-year period, get it and you possibly get it and then you could apply for it again?
Well, that's what paid for Veterans Park.
Oh, I think that's
Or,
a
I
great
mean-
way to do
I
it.
mean, it paid for Veterans Park, it paid for this park here,
Right.
and uncommonly, those were all paid for by the state lottery, uh, local government
I don't
grant.
think you could win it twice, though.
No.
I think that's what I heard.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was trying to
No,
understand.
you
win
only
twice.
get one time per.
Okay.
contract, Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
we
you
could
s-
only get one. Even if you were on that leap year, that 2-year period, it still might be extremely difficult because there are limited grants, and so they don't always fund twice in a row, especially for the same project phase one.
Okay.
I mean, technically, yes, but might be quite the challenge on that leap year. Not gonna make.
So you might get $750,000 one year, and what we did is we waited a couple years and we didn't go in with the same project, we went in with a different one each.
So you could basically just work on the fields for the next one.
Well, you basically get your base in place and
Right.
grade your fields, and then, a couple of years down the road, you might be able to go after fields or something else, but you'd probably be challenged. The 750 ones are tough. 300, 400,000's a little bit more realistic.
So let's talk scenarios for a second. So when we went out for feedback, we really heard pretty loudly about the sports field.
Yes.
I mean, so loud that was, that was the majority. And there was other things that were secondary. So let's say, for instance, that we don't need the fields because we have access through the schools and whatever, and we already know that our fields there aren't that great anyway. We're not even using them for a lot of the year. So do we need this parking, road, restrooms, whatever, if we're not going to put fields there? I mean, like that's what I'm asking. Like,
Yeah, as a hiker, I would like to find a place to go to the bathroom.
right, but again, remember, this is nothing. This is basically north. It's not Grabhorn Park. It's just the northern section of our Veterans Park already. I'm just asking again. I'm not advocating this. I'm just asking now. Let's say we find out that, geez, we don't need these fields. So, one, what would we use that land? And two, what infrastructure would we need?
I think we still are interested in like another full court basketball court, pickleball courts. I mean, I think people would, I think we could decide to put that there. Have more of those fields up because people were asking for another full-size basketball court. And so and that is something that we did ask for, like if there was room or if these fields didn't work out, we would like to have those. So I think that could be our backup plan.
And Paul, I, as a basketball coach, do think we do need to do some more basketball courts, especially for the summer. We have a lot of kids that play full year soccer, full year volleyball things, but not basketball right now. They can't get into the gym. They can't go in and play on the weekend and do stuff. So I think some nicer courts would be useful. And again, they could be multi-use. They could have a racquetball thing you could hit the ball up against, tennis court type stuff as well.
Dave?
I strongly support that. I go by Miller Park many times a day in the summer and it is packed nonstop.
Mhm.
We have a massive shortage in basketball courts for this community.
I'm just trying to get conversations
I
because
lo- I love it.
I 100% agree. I don't want
Cool.
to lead the witness on this. But it obviously would be a lot cheaper to go that direction too. I would imagine if you went with smaller courts that you wouldn't need the big retaining walls per se because you're trying to, this monster field.
Yeah,
And that's what I was hoping that you guys were all gonna land on is let's figure it out, because to me, I'm not fully convinced with the data I have that we need those fields. I've got a 10-year-old son that's playing Columbia County United, and right now they're in no shortage of fields, although they're using Warren School and the church up in Warren and things. We play games down here where the mid school is proposed to possibly go. So, I mean, they've got some juggling to do, but I just don't know. There's been such a shift in athletics since COVID and things that I'm not quite clear what the demand is, and I would want to bet that before we commit. However, leveling the property, like you mentioned, it opens it up to any type of use once you've graded it out that way.
sorry, Mike, I'm gonna have Brian go first and then,
One thing too is like when we have these bigger events like the powwows and stuff, if there's another set of restrooms over there, people are parking there, they don't have to go all the way, try to find the porta potties, or those that are there too. So it kind of opens that if you have another restroom, which if it was over by the road, it'd probably make a little bit more sense maybe versus,
in the middle of the park.
yeah, because if it's in the middle, I mean, that are bathrooms right there anyway. So
Yeah. Good thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I mean, the restrooms are about a half mile from veterans, and that's quite a distance. And I guess the vision I had was, there's that house that goes with the property that we're gonna make into Dave's office for parks. Um, but never got that far. But the truth is, that was going to be a trailhead for people could park there, walk the trail, tie into veterans, and I mean, it makes it wonder. A lot of people like to walk, and that's a wonderful. It's going to be a really wonderful venue when it's finished. And so that even if, and like you say, just fields for a bunch of you know young adults want to go out and play baseball or softball for a picnic. I mean, all of a sudden you have that opportunity too, even if you don't develop them fully, you have that opportunity. So, I mean, look at Miller. They use that for soccer. So I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of use, even if we don't.
Right, Mike, there's a lot of possibilities. I mean, we've talked of an amphitheater is, we wreck this baseball fields when we have the, celebration or whatever every year. We don't really have anywhere that we could have a Thursday night concert series or something. It's been talked about. I'm not advocating for it, but it's been on the list. Just wanted to bring it up because it is under Parks and Rec, really.
It is, yeah. Jeanette?
I want to go back to the basketball. I do support the basketball. Remind me, is this going to be a covered basketball court?
I mean, that is something that we've discussed a lot,
Right.
that I think we would like to have more covered, full court basketball courts, because I think it would be heavily utilized.
Right. I agree.
Year round for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I mean, I think it kind of all sounds like we have a similar, we agree with Mike's plan, and this could be something where we could begin to move forward, but also keep in mind that this will probably be at least some sort of field use, whether it becomes multi-use or we end up doing sports and pickleball. And I think the one thing that we haven't, we have also agreed that we've heard the feedback that we would like the parking on the side of Smith Road versus a paved driveway going all the way through. So I think if we're going to make sure that something is said tonight, I think that's also something that needs to be brought up. Isaac?
So whatever you decide as a committee, I think it would be best for that to be written by a committee member or a group of members so that we really have a good understanding of what it is you want instead of staff interpreting that.
Okay.
So maybe somebody can write that up and kind of run it, send out an email generally. Hey, does this sound correct? And then without replying all, somebody could give feedback and say, yep, this is right. And then that could be transmitted to the city. So we really have a good understanding. I know you're laughing because the stuff.
I think Paul would do great at that. Would you be?
Uh-oh.
Would you be willing to write something up for that? Do you kind of have?
I don't mind doing it. There's just the one wild card though, the fields.
So could we say that, we want
Option 1 or 2? Or something?
yeah, option 1 or 2, we want to begin the dirt work for a potential multi-use field. And if we eventually are able to develop enough fields or begin to have adequate fields through the school district, then we would like it to have basketball courts, pickleball courts.
Well, I could easily summarize that and send it to everyone, and anyone can respond single response to me. And so then we could get a consensus.
Yeah.
And then I could send it back to the city.
And then we can make an official, I think probably just an official vote.
Yeah.
Next meeting.
Okay.
You can put that first on the agenda then
Yes, that would be wonderful.
before we do anything with Darcy.
Yes. Yeah. I want to be able to just get vote on that, and then we can move on. Terry?
To note too about the public comment stuff and public process, because you're not making an official decision by email, you can share drafts and feedback as long as it's not replied all. So Paul could send a draft to everybody and say, don't reply all. This is what I have. And you can send individual feedback to Paul. That way you can actually kind of work as a group.
Can I be CC'd on that? If they are said like, so it's just Paul and me, so I'm seeing everybody's
As long
feedback.
as it's not a communication of more
Okay.
than 3.
Yeah, so if we do have feedback, I would like to be CC'd on it, so I hear everybody's feedback firsthand.
And if you don't mind too, for the public record, when you're done with that one thread, if we could just get a copy, if you're comfortable, sharing a copy of those communications, that way records complete about the process, so that anybody looking back knows what exactly happened, how we got to that decision.
Okay, Harry and then Ian.
I'd like to say that the minimal amount of damage with asphalt, like somebody said about cutting a road in there, I prefer not to have a road through there. The parking lot, I think, should just be pull-in parking off of Smith Road, width of the property. And multi-use, whatever we end up deciding on as far as fields.
So there's a few dynamics there. That's got to go through land use. So that doesn't meet code. You can't just make up your rules of how you want to have your on-street parking like that.
I'm not trying to make the rules.
I know, I'm just saying that we've heard that, and Lori and Chris could give you a million reasons why that doesn't. And a little. I hear and I've heard all of the complaints against the road and everything else. We factor in here though is that if you don't want the parking, or if you want the parking at the bottom, that pushes the fields up into the greater slopes. So we lose that. So we really need to think about the whole thing holistically. And I understand the desires to not have these impacts. I really, truly do. But it has to function. I mean, you've got to accommodate a certain amount of cars for certain types of events. And if you don't build adequate parking, where are these people going to go? They're going to start migrating over onto the residential streets because the park already is at max capacity during summer events as it is. And the little parking lot by the dog park is where people are primarily going to go if you don't build a parking lot up at the top, because you're forcing people who, some of which may be handicapped, to have to climb that grade. And I don't know how many of you walk from Smith Road to the dog park. It's a pretty good jaunt. It's a lot longer than you think. And if somebody's got a handicap, climbing that grade the whole way with a wheelchair or something, not very favorable. So we as staff are trying to look at all of those dynamics. So by putting the parking clear at the bottom, I just see a million problems with that, for one. I mean, so that's kind of why the parking was between the sport court / pool / whatever on the high end of it, with some retaining walls up there. And then the fields were down on the bottom because that's the only way they work. That's where the flatter part of the property is with the less impact. So I just want you guys to be thinking about that. Please don't shut this down, because you're really tying our hands in design that we can almost not build what you want. So just want that to stay in mind. The other thing that I will attest to for the road, I understand all the reasons not to want it, and I agree with a lot of them. For me as a public safety official, that is the only other access if we lose the bridge to get people out of that entire neighborhood. There is a couple hundred homes up there that are literally landlocked if something were to happen to that bridge. They all have to go out Apple Valley Road. So me and the fire chief and the police chiefs have all attested that we really need a secondary access out of that property. Now, if there was some version of a wide path road with a gate, I'm completely okay with that. But at least in the event of an emergency, we can open that and evacuate those people.
Dave, are you talking about attaching to Casera Way again?
Yes, in some version. Like I said, I don't care if it's just a path that's car capable. I'm just telling you, if it doesn't get built, I just want to be on the record for public safety. That is why that's always been there. So I just want you guys to understand that nobody was doing that in any malicious manner, but it's a public safety issue. Plus, I truly think if you do have ball fields here, you're going to be within 6 months, you're going to be like, God, I sure wish we would have built that road. Because when all the people are angry coming around Smith Road, because they first pulled into the park and realized their game is clear on the other end of the property, they're going to be driving around because there isn't going to be adequate parking. They're not going to be happy, and Google's going to be sending people to the wrong spots. It's going to be a disaster. I just want to air that's my take on it. Always has been, always will be.
No, I hear you. I think there were some also like going back into the grab horn, and I don't want to bring up too much of the road. But there were also challenges like whether or not you anyone would even be able to cross the creek.
That's easy.
Oh, okay.
you'd wipe out the dog
We
park.
already had fish-friendly culverts factored in.
Right.
All of that stuff was done.
Dog park,
Yeah,
the dog park is half the size than it should be, and we're a growing city.
right.
There's no place to, right now to put another dog park. We've been looking, you know,
The-
Cat Head is not an option. I mean, so, I mean, yeah, we are bringing this up because it's probably spent 40 hours on it at
Right.
least.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do completely, I understand from a public safety. I think that we just spent so much time kind of vetting it within the grab horn, and there were a lot of constraints for adding a road as well.
If the road comes back into play, we're gonna start from zero again. I'm sorry. I mean, this is not me personally. I'm
I'm just saying,
mean,
I'm gonna advocate. for
500 and some people having being online, talking about it. I mean, we're starting from zero. Sorry. I mean,
Bear in mind, though, there was several proposals by people in this room of even a gated. So, I mean, I'm not here to argue about it.
Okay.
I'm really not. I'm going on the record that those are my reasons why we all as staff felt that that was a critical piece of infrastructure for this community. I think that if you don't factor in people's use of this and access to this property, you're making a huge mistake.
Right. Ian?
I agree with the road comment, but I'm just a little confused of where we're ending up with this conversation. I don't want us to lose the big picture as the park committee as to what this overall vision for Grabhorn is. I do understand money reasons for phasing and stuff, but that's not really what the vision is that we're going to set. That's the way of accomplishing that vision over time. And yeah, I know funding is a big issue, but I think we're here to set a vision for this park. And if we scale it back to what we can do within this 750,000, we're gonna lose the vision for it. So I'm not 100% understanding what we're leaving tonight doing. Are we saying we're gonna wait to comment on Grabhorn until we hear what comes forth in the school's bond based on their fields?
My current take is that we will say, we want phase 1 to be bathroom, parking lot, trail, and dirt work. And then by that time, we'll know what the school district is, and we want phase 2 to be multi-field use. And so it'll be a little bit more general. And then by that time, we will know what the school district is planning to do with the middle school. And so then we can say, okay, we need a softball field here. Or we can say, oh, look, they just created this beautiful turf softball field. Let's go basketball courts instead.
Okay, I 100% agree with that. But what you're just describing is a full vision and then scaling back. Because you can't put a bathroom without knowing the level of the field. You can't put a parking lot without knowing where the stormwater is going. You can't do anything without the full vision. To say like, maybe we're going to do turf, maybe we're not. You can't build a field or turf without putting the under drainage, without putting the gravel layer, without grading it. Like there is a lot of stuff you have to do. Yeah, you can come back and do it later, but your economy of scale is wasted at that point in time. Anything, any retaining wall, any parking lot, any access, any trail, any stormwater, any of that has to be fully figured out first.
Isaac, do you want
I'll pass to JJ for a second, but if you could come back to me when you're done.
JJ?
So a lot of these people have been working very hard on Grabhorn for years. I wasn't even part of it during the pandemic because I couldn't leave the house. And I completely agree. A vision is absolutely essential, but if you don't have the money, it means nothing. And so by having the vision and then breaking it down in phases to apply for grants is not only a practical thing to do, but it's really one of the few choices the city has because it has no other, outside funding like a Parks and Rec district. So that is kind of how it has to go.
I wasn't arguing that at all.
Okay,
Okay. I was
I
saying,
misunderstood.
I was saying if we stop at phase 1.
Oh, I don't
No,
want to stop.
oh,
at
no,
phase one.
no,
Okay,
no,
but-
oh, no.
Again, I was saying I'm just confused.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I see
No,
what you're
no,
saying.
absolutely not.
Clarify regarding phasing.
Yeah.
try to put all these thoughts together. So when council ultimately approves this plan through the master plan, staff's going to interpret that as a directive to do the work. And if Grabhorn's number one to develop, our directive is do the work, and we have X dollars or grants, right? Part of what we have to do is implement as much as possible. And so there will be automatic phasing, and it might not, if you say, oh, this is phase one up to here, even if you say that, that might not actually be phase one. It might be beyond that. It might be implementation stuff. I think Ian touched on it actually last meeting or maybe the meeting before. That's like different conversation sometimes. And how we get there, what phases go where, having that vision is what we're after, right? The master plan is about the vision, and the master plan, we need the picture, what we want generally. It can change, it can be modified when it comes to implementation, how that happens, what the phasing looks like. Some of that will be dictated by the dollars that come in. Some of that will be dictated by land use says. Some of that will be dictated by that logically has to come first when you build property. That part that can happen later. It doesn't have to happen tonight. The proposal doesn't even have to talk about phasing. You can say we'd prefer this happen if you have to make a choice X, Y, Z. But really, that vision is what we're after, I think, from the city's perspective.
I would say we'll have if the measure passes, if the bond passes in November, by November, we'll be able to say like, oh, we have a way more clear. And so I don't even think, nothing will have happened at that point. So I think kind of thinking about it in this process just gives us that extra little time while still being able to have something in our master plan.
Yeah, to me, that's what we were leaving tonight thinking, is that we were going to tell the council that we would like to understand what the school district is doing before making any major decisions moving forward on Grabhorn.
I think
Difficulty with that is just the master plan is probably going to wrap up before that happens. Because
Yeah.
until that bond passes or doesn't, we might not know.
yeah. So we have
So we might have more data a little bit, but until November runs and the bond goes or doesn't, right? Because if it doesn't go, middle school's out. If it does go, it changes things.
Yeah.
But the master plan work, that ends at some point between now and November.
Mm.
If we don't have something in there, and that goes back to what I'm talking about, being able to modify it. Because when we go to do that development, we're going to be having similar conversations, and probably, we need something to guide us.
Yeah.
Either way.
more thoughts.
I do have more thoughts. I think understanding that and knowing the timeline of the master plan, that including the fields in some way, and I know we were talking about it, maybe just generalizing more as a multi-purpose is the right thing to do. That's what our data is telling us. That's what the data in the master plan is going to lead towards. That's what the public was saying. And nobody knows what kind of sports fields are coming out of the school bond, if it even passes. Nobody knows how the school is planning on managing those fields.
Right.
Nobody knows how much public access those fields are going to have.
Right. So the primary statement that we would make is that we would like a multi-use field. And then, but we could have a kind of a caveat in there that says, however, if something magically descends upon us where we have all these turf fields given to us, then we would like this to be basketball courts, and I think is kind of my sentiment.
I do have one last question. Dave, is there anything on any of those three options from a public work side of things just is not a possibility to be built? Just to let you know, I'm a landscape architect. I've
Difficult. The one that's both fields, be the less feasible. It's just got the bigger footprint to try to level that property out. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I'm a landscape architect. I work on projects this size and bigger, major slopes, massive like retaining walls and other things. I understand that lots of things are possible. Is there anything you see there from a public works side of things that's just
Just where I
not
was
possible?
trying to go is that I'm afraid you guys are putting us into a corner. If you're adamant that the parking lot absolutely has to be a Smith Road, you may not get your fields, is what I'm saying. You're pushing the field south by doing that. For every foot of parking, whatever, you push the field south, which goes into the biggest part of the hillside and slope. So you've got the most excavation to try to level that, and it may not be feasible. And so if you guys are so set that you absolutely will not have a parking lot up there and any kind of access road to it, might be shooting yourself in the foot is what I'm afraid of. I'm trying to keep you guys open to things that if we build that road up to a parking lot, as in some of these renderings, but we don't punch through the dog park, so be it. But what I just don't want you guys to really hurt yourself here and the greater good by not having at least a parking lot up above.
Mike?
So Dave, don't you, by the house down there in that area, don't you think you could get away with putting a small parking area for a trailhead along?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've never deviated from
Okay.
those renderings. However, I don't think you would build a restroom.
You'd build it on the other side or,
It just needs to get up above the floodplain.
okay.
Dave, isn't the
Oh.
one corner, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor's first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, everything you guys keep talking, I'm looking at option 3 and it keeps kind of coming back of what you're saying, parking down by that house. I mean, a future sports court could be the basketball court. I'm kind of looking at that one. If you decide fields is what you need, the softball overlaps the soccer, doesn't need to be quite as big, could start out as grass, until we know. It is the flattest spot, right? U13, that's the flattest, easiest.
That option is if I were to do a takeaway from tonight, it would be that, but rather than the 5.5 foot retaining walls, we would just slope the soil down and build it as level as we possibly can.
Hey, Isaac,
We're below that.
is there any way you can beam up the options?
Paul, go ahead.
So Dave, isn't that one corner that you're talking about by Smith also the wettest? If you look at the wetlands, that corner that you're
It
saying,
is, but that's where you guys are proposing the parking lot.
right, but if you're proposing the fields there.
Yes, if you look at the drawing, it does encroach down into that.
So you would,
We would be filling that in with soil.
you'd be filling that with soil right there and then cutting the rest?
You
Yeah,
would push the soil from here to there to flatten it out.
you would balance that out. So it's steeper, and I have some topography in that packet. It's steeper towards the top, and it by natural design starts to flatten out as you get down towards the bottom. So that's where you have the greater ability to do a cut fill balance than you do anywhere else. And so if you pull that down, you're utilizing the already semi-level portion of it.
And then the second question I have is for the sports guys here. So you're saying that we already have a problem at Veterans. If we build a multi-use field there out of, with just dirt, is it going to be usable? And how many months of the year is it going to be usable?
Well, the baseball field is actually a very good facility. It's just this 2-month period, March, April, and May. Rest of the summer, the baseball field should be fine. But,
You can put dirt, like the high school softball field is more playable because of the sand dirt mixture when it's all dirt, no grass. And so it would be a little more playable. But I would really recommend looking at a turf infield type of thing to where then it's usable and the rest is grass. You just don't have dirt.
Okay, and then off the
That's a-
beaten path a little bit, but do you think the leagues, because we would look at probably maybe outside sourcing, do you think the leagues could come up with funding for something like that? I mean, and is that something that we would, I'm just asking, I don't know, because you guys run these things.
I think we saw a really, a turf field come up real fast for the.
Yes, that's why I'm
Yeah.
asking, yeah.
So I think that if we just kind of lay the groundwork, I think that those things can begin to happen if there's enough drive from the community.
Right, because, I mean, and Dave, that would help you if you knew beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, the city, we're years out at this, with the current funding stages we're working with, it'd be years before we could ever build $1 million turf field. And honestly, is that the best use of the money?
No, but if
I
we're
don't
saying it was
personally
just a
think so, but-
diamond, if it was just a diamond and it was, a quarter, it was basically a quarter the size of the football field.
Like on that version, Paul, if
Yeah.
you just turf the infield of the softball
Yeah,
field
that's what I'm,
and then grass everywhere else, I mean, soccer can
Small.
play on grass. Yeah, it's a smaller area. It's not as much.
I think the difference there, Paul, is that we know more than maybe they did when they built Veterans. I've never gone out there with an instrument and shot how much slope, but we could put more slope into this field so that water drains off better than it currently is. I honestly, like I said, I've never put an instrument on it. I've built many baseball fields in my days, and I try to have that 0.5 to 1% positive drainage away. I think those fields and veterans are relatively flat and they are just holding the water. We've had a couple seasons now where we've had these wet springs and those kids suffer for it. But as soon as it does dry up, they're wonderful. It just, you're talking 100 or 2,000 per field to dig them up and start over and put sub drainage in there. And once again, is that worth the amount of money and taking away from the other functions and other things we want to build? It's such a big aspirational list. It's like, how do you prioritize use? You know, the ball fields get a couple months out of the year. So is it better to invest in that for a few select kids, or do we build a whole nother park? Do we invest in Chapman Landing? Those are the $1 million questions that I know we're all working diligently to find the answer to, but
You do have the issue with soccer balls a little bit, but you could push the field to where it's touching the infield turf and get it off of Smith Road by 20 more feet. Maybe that helps.
It's not my personal feedback. I'm just trying to
No,
give the
but
citizens their,
Just kind of coming back to this one is,
I haven't been under 13 playing soccer for quite a long time.
I think
Well,
this,
even-
this one certainly represents more of a multi-use.
even if the
approach.
schools does what they want, this wouldn't overdo it. We're not turfing $1 million field. You know, if they don't do anything, well, then that's when you talk about a turf field. But if they're turfing fields, this is grass. And it has, I like the idea of the sports court over there. And Paul, I would like to look at Dave's idea of somehow in an emergency where a road, you could go through around the dog park, you know, over the creek and tie into that parking lot. I mean,
yeah, and there is actually already a traffic rated culvert crossing that creek that it was designed for sewer service access and different emergency vehicles. So if we could literally just get from that parking lot onto the path, which is that,
Yeah, it's
if you drag it over, you could kind of see what I mean. We could literally just tie those paths together in some version out of that parking lot onto the existing path where you can see where the culvert crosses
For emergencies.
for emergencies
Okay.
only. Yep. Yeah, so you'd utilize that and then we would just have like a big concrete path heading southbound, tying on to that, you know, width that cars could get through, and then either gated or bollard, you know, so that it's only there if you truly need to get a fire truck or anybody out or whatever. But then it's not, because I know a lot of the concern, and I would love to reiterate this, I think that the concern was people just didn't want that to turn into a freeway road.
And
And I completely understand that. And so if we could build the road to the parking, that's what I'm trying to not tunnel us down to. If you guys are open to that and not having the connectivity, I'm great with that. That's fine. But if you really are set that that parking lot has to be on the north end, I just think that it's going to hurt the options for a design.
and the parking there, I mean, you still would have that amount of concrete if you put it at the other end. The only addition is the road.
really,
The other option is we could utilize some of these spaces too, or enlarge the dog park too. I mean, this isn't set in stone, but if we could build from this general concept, I think you'd go a lot further.
I went really fast. It's past 7 o'clock. So do I have a motion to continue the meeting past 7?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
In a nutshell, I think if
Yeah.
this group or however this goes could at least give us enough information of what you're comfortable with playing with, we could go back and have this modified based on that feedback.
I am also in favor of trying to figure out if we could potentially enlarge the dog park, because I think that would also go over really well, especially like if we had to make a concession for a longer driveway for the emergency. If we also put in, but that we're enlarging the dog park, I think that would be helpful. Joel?
I actually was going through emails before this meeting and went through one from you, Joel, where you had drawn up one that showed that exact thing with that connectivity. And I'm all for that. I just don't want to be so set that we don't build anything that,
So how wide would that be?
I'd go a little wider than that, but 15.
15, it'd just be
We can't hear for the record.
Jeanette.
If you look at the kind of the premier park, Salmon Creek up in Vancouver, I think they've got a 12 to 14-foot pathway. That's about the multi-use bikeway, walkway, you name it, wheelchairs, and emergency vehicles. They have bollards protecting it, and it's a marvelous resource for that whole regional park.
Well, I guess the other thing to talk about, there's two dynamics. So you would build an adequate road to the parking lot, and then the shared use path would be everything south of that parking, whatever. It may not even terminate in that fashion. That's just a rendering. So if we could connect from said road or parking lot to the existing path, I think that's all we really need to do, is just create somewhere you could get through if you ever needed to.
Well, the larger question though is, do you really need that parking lot?
Well, I fully feel you do, because that was based on shared use. If you expand on that, you're not gonna have adequate parking for people to utilize it.
Ian?
Was there a metric or something used to determine how many parking spaces?
Yeah, we actually did some work about,
Okay.
Car counts for games. If we had two separate fields, what we would be looking at for a soccer teams, because two soccer teams, potentially two baseball or softball teams at the same time. And if they're doing a tournament, you have them swapping. And so Dave has the
We
number.
actually did our own in-house study of that, and then we had 3J do it as a secondary check, and then
So it is accurate.
Okay.
Do you take
But
into consideration this other parking is also being used during those games?
Originally, the parking lot was far larger.
Paul?
So two more questions on parking, Dave. One is the initial plan, veterans, that went along with this had you paving the parking on the overflow. Is that still on the docket?
it is a viable option, but it is not on the docket. As of right now, it's a standby in case we need it option.
Yeah.
There were several discussions about the narrowness of Kuchera. And so one of those concepts was, by building that parking lot, we would make that a two-way road and no more on-street parking. So that was kind of a safety factor that has been brought up several times over the years. We're not planning on building that, but there's a preliminary design on the ready, feel the need. And we have several photos of during ball events. This past year, they held tournaments out there for Little League, and only on one field actually would fill that entire overflow and every parking stall and even up into the neighborhood. So when Little League is hosting a major tournament, there's not enough room out there now. So
Ian?
So, I'm sorry, one more question on the follow-up of the parking.
Yeah.
Well, and on that, we had a lot of feedback on just the parking on the road. Are you concerned about putting parking on the road with this paved access parking? Because we were told, again, this is just from our feedback, kids running between the cars, and then it was also an access way on veterans. But yet, it seems like we're proposing the same thing here. Is that what you're proposing?
I'm not necessarily proposing anything at this point, but the first design did have on-street parking on the east side of the road, but I believe not on the west side. So as it is currently in Veterans Park now, where the side where people are utilizing, that's where they would get out of their car and not cross traffic, if I'm understanding you right.
I'm just saying where the paved access park has parking. Our feedback was to remove the parking on veterans, yet we're adding it here.
Right.
On veterans, they were running up into the upper parking lot. Here, they won't be running into that road. They're getting out of their car. There's no reason for a kid to be on that road.
I'm just, again, I
I
just
see.
want to bring it up from the citizens aspect, is that our feedback was that it could be dangerous. It is dangerous on veterans, and yet we're proposing it here. And do we feel it's a concern on this
The
access road?
key factor of that, though, is the
Is it width?
width of the road itself.
Mhm.
Sure is just too narrow. I don't know why it was built that way. I don't know if they were trying to utilize a footprint. I can't speak to that. He would make sure this meets proper standards to not have those issues. The other thing that we've talked about in our traffic safety committee meetings and things is ways to mitigate that with speed humps and islands where there's specific spots to cross. Kind of like it was the county built on EM lots. There's a little island now that comes out that's delineated so that those people can step out into where they can get a clear view of traffic's coming or not too. I mean, there's ways to address that. Obviously, those are factors we consider, but
This is what, a 32-foot road?
30.
30.
So
Ian?
So this plan, when you start looking at it, that paved access driveway with parking has a sidewalk that dead ends, like they're setting this up to punch that road through in the future. So if you took that little piece of, and this is maybe getting a little too much in the weeds, but I think we can find some efficiency out here. If you took that little wing of parking this to the upper portion above the future sports courts, and you reconfigured all that so that you don't have an access road anymore, that's just all parking. It's all parking. The access road ends in a parking lot. Now you've added more parking and or you've added all that space where the parking is now, and you can put your dog park there. You can make a larger
and
future
actually
sports
dog
court.
park is what I had in my mind off the end of that road is we would extend that boundary out. They would have some additional parking dog park as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that lot over on the south side, it fills up. When the dog park's at full capacity, people are trying to use the play structures, it's already too small. And that's what I'm afraid of is that you put the parking clear down on the north side too, people are gonna try to cram in here and it's just gonna be even more congested to utilize whatever entities go into the Gravhorn side, so.
and once you start building all this parking and all these sports fields, and it's a busy area, it is completely the wrong spot for a dog park. Like I know people like it as a dog park now, but to smash it between a whole bunch of fields and playgrounds and stuff, it's just a wrong spot for a dog park.
Find another spot.
So
Yeah.
we need to find
We
another
need
spot.
Another spot regardless.
Yeah.
In the future.
We only have one dog park in this whole.
Yeah.
Almost.
That is,
That's what I'm getting at. Like,
It's a joke.
it's already too small.
yeah.
How are we gonna sandwich it between all these uses
history.
that dogs hate?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, it's in the wrong spot. Let's find a better spot for a dog park in this
I
town.
think every person would be super
Western
amenable
property.
to another dog park in another place. That was never actually the concern that,
Built by the citizens.
yeah, that the dog park,
Long history.
yeah.
Or let's look at it a little more cohesively. Punch that road through, put some more parking along that road. Move the dog park over to the parking lot that's over off to the right side of this entire drawing. And, you know, I'm just throwing stuff out now, but.
So,
Now you're right back to actually, I love the way you're thinking. That is exactly what we had talked to Jim Likens about is the road would go through, the public works shop would disappear. That entire area to the west of the road would be 100% dog park footprint. So it was going to grow exponentially. And then we had also talked about putting a small secondary park on this side of the road for the small dogs. So it would be designated as a small dog park only, that they don't have issues. So I did have discussions with the dog park folks about it, but
so I, there is significant history with with putting the road through. So again, I don't want to go all the way back there because then it is going to be,
We have an obligation to the citizens.
Yeah.
We went through a 2-year process. We
Right.
heard what they had to say. made our recommendations. They were approved by the council. And to then change it at this meeting. would
Right.
be-
right. It would completely go against what we did as the GPAC.
Okay, but we're also gonna say the school district going out for a bond is changing the entire idea for the
We,
park as well. So like, let's not hem ourselves in. If we're really gonna look at this, we really like, are gonna take the word from the public works director on the difficulty of some things. And honestly, he's 100% correct. When there's a bigger event going on, people in this community are gonna be pissed when they go to a parking lot, it's full. They got to drive for 5 minutes to get to the next parking lot. It's just, we're doing this for the best of the public. I think we need to take that into account as well.
Go ahead.
I think we need to take into account that we spent 2 years talking to the public. So if we want to spend 2 more years talking to the public, then we can look at these things. Because in this room, there's been a lot of great ideas and they were done in a vacuum. And that's how we got in trouble with the citizens. which is why we created the committee and we went to countless feedback sessions and sat at tents and listened to people and brought that all back in. If we want to open it up again, we have to go through the same process again.
I would love to hear feedback from other folks in the room.
I'd like to maybe move on to some other points on this because I have a pretty busy schedule.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I like this, concept. You know, sometimes you gotta win a battle before, best made plans, if it doesn't pass the political, you can't get it done politically, and that's what happened here, then you have to kind of start over and figure out how to do it. And so that's kind of part of the reason why I thought it made sense to maybe do, call this, there's not a thing wrong with this plan, except for maybe it needs to be in phases. And I just don't think at this point in time you can, maybe in the future you connect that road, but that's, there's a lot of blood that was shed on that. And I think in a battle and then worry about war later. And so phase one, you do the parking area down below the trail, maybe grade the property for multi-purpose fields, and over time, we're going to be able to kind of sort out, this can be our concept, but over time we can sort out how we're going to pay for the rest of it. And because that's going to be a daunting, it's going to take several years just to get the money to do this looks like, what do you think, Ian, a $3 or $4 million project?
Oh, yeah.
So, if we get $1 million and just get a piece of it done, then get the fields where we can just use them as a community, and then the road stuff, you can have that as part of the plan. But
Ask a question. Do you think 3.75 million is close to that lower parking lot, the groundwork and a trail?
I would look at Dave because he's done.
To do like if this was the one you guys decided to do the trail, the lower parking lot and the grading work, that almost $750,000?
I would think. I mean, well,
Like you said,
I was hoping that we would get the greater part of that upper lot built for that grant. I think that road qualifies for some SDC application. So if we could, that was the intent, is that we built the road and use those funds. Struggle to find out that makes your parking dollars. I'm not saying yes or no, but I would want to explore some more financial options here.
Dave, you said that the original plan was to actually move the dog park down to the bottom and not have that lower parking lot, correct?
No,
Is that what you said?
if the road went through, it would punch through to Crucera, and then everything on the west side, so up above the road, would be all dog park.
Oh, okay.
So the area that's being utilized to the west of the public workshop, that whole rectangle up there was going to be dedicated.
Okay.
Proposed idea.
Okay.
So they were actually growing.
Right.
They were doing.
But as of you're saying that even if we didn't make a plan to punch the road through at this time, we still couldn't grow it that way? Is there a reason we can't?
Well, I mean, you've got some expenses there. You would have to deal with the creek, and those were things that we were prepared
Right.
to do.
Okay, that was
With it, we knew that the shop had to move and things, and I don't think without bigger benefit that we'd want to just tear down that public workshop for a dog park. That's very feasible. So as the greater picture of restructuring how all of that works, then that's what we looked at doing.
all right. So we need to make a decision and move on. So I do want to hear, and we've heard a lot tonight. I am personally okay with leaving this how it is, where there is a bit more access way, but I want to hear what everybody else's thoughts are.
Okay.
Brian?
Considering this has been such a big thing, I know it might take a little more time. It might behoove you to just go around the room and give everybody a chance directly.
Sure.
Make sure that we hear everything. Done that before, and to make sure people have a chance. Everybody has a chance.
Brian, go ahead. thoughts on this?
I just was wondering, can still email you and that way we can keep on.
Yeah, I mean, since we're at 7:30, I feel like level of service is going to be a very lengthy thing. And so, my thoughts was potentially pushing level of service to the next meeting if there was going to be space on it. If everyone was agreement with that. So that way
Yes.
we can finish our thoughts on this and then be out of here and
Will that affect me?
you make it to our next meeting.
Huh?
Can you make it to our
I'll
next
come.
meeting?
Yeah, I can
Fantastic.
talk about this.
I would like you here for level of service as well.
I am not 100% positive what we're doing in terms
I'm
of
just,
master
I'm
plan.
just worried if we don't give them some direction, I don't know if that's.
I'm asking
We don't
for
need to do
Grabhorn.
Grabhorn today. I mean, if that's, should we all just sit on it?
I do like the idea of everybody kind of going around and kind of just talking about it. But I feel like level of service is going to be another hour and a half conversation.
So
Yeah.
both of these things are important moving forward because we're
Yeah.
already moving into prioritization.
Yeah,
So we're kind of a little behind as it is.
yeah,
I will talk with Darcy and figure out what her plans are, but I think she was going to be bringing back some more data and having another longer session. That said, I don't know if both of those would fit in one meeting. Also, talk about adding a meeting
yeah.
just for level of service. I don't know what schedules look like, and maybe find an alternative time.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
These things are, like Dave said, we're getting to the point where we need to have some kind of definition around these issues because we're starting to get so far past them that we really need that data
right.
locked in.
So can we get more information from Darcy and then we can make a decision? I can send it out whether we can add in, just do one meeting where everybody's plans that we're going to be there for super long, or we plan in a second meeting.
She was already planning on being in front of council, I think, May 1st, so.
Planning Commission and City Council have a joint meeting.
Okay.
So given that we did the ATM and have that data, given that we're going there, I'm guessing she's going to want. We're gonna have to find.
Okay. Okay. Brian, like you, did you share all of your thoughts?
Anytime.
I'm thinking that, yeah, this plan works good. I just thinking that living off the field is probably going to be our best bet. I do like that having emergency access, but that's it. You know, definitely not pushing the road further. I'm still kind of confused on how that dog park, if we did move that around, because you're seeing the west, there's the creek goes right next to that shop. So yeah, it might get bigger area, but then the creeks, you'd have to put a whole culvert all the way farther. So I'm not sure. It's hard to visualize that and get confused between, north and south and what's on this. It's hard to figure it out. So, but I think that's just going to be our best bet. Just go from there. I mean, we might have to do some changes later on, but it'd make the whole area a lot more usable for everybody, no matter what we do later on.
Okay. Right, Terry, make sure you speak into the
Yeah.
mic, please.
I guess it's multi-purpose. Great idea. At this point, I'm not convinced about punching the road through there. I actually kind of like Ian's idea about just turning that area into all parking lot. So I guess as far as changing anything, I don't really have any changes that I'd make. Things pretty good.
Yeah, I think the road is kind of a non-starter just from the 2 years of work that we've done with the citizens. But I do like this design. I do like Ian's idea of basically truncating that road and making that more of the parking area. I think on the dog park end that we could expand the dog park into there's a small dog park and a large dog park. The small dog park can actually be completely separate than a large. In fact, most owners like that because of issues. So we could maybe create a smaller dog park somewhere else, like in this little area, and then expand the standard dog park. So that's a win-win. And then for future sports courts, remember pickleball should be about 350 to 400 feet away from any residential house. So that should be taken into consideration in the future courts. Besides that, I think it's great.
And
I think of the three options that we've seen, this one is probably my vote for moving forward and giving you guys an idea as to the approach that this will end up being. I do think there's some efficiencies in parking and using every little bit of asphalt we're putting out there for parking, because I know we need a lot of spots. And then maybe a little more efficiency in tightening up those two fields and reducing a little bit of conflict that's happening on the far north side. But as far as options go, I'm in favor of this one moving forward.
I'm in favor of this one.
Me too.
We're gonna have to think about it. No, actually, I think this is a wonder. I think that closing off the road for, making that into parking lot makes a lot of sense. I don't think we want to go down the road fighting the battle. And emergency access makes a lot of sense. And, but no, I like this plan. I think it's great.
I'm fully in support of emergency access. Ian.
Sorry, I just have one more comment now that I'm looking at this. Dave, the really dark lines that sort of border the softball field, that's the retaining wall, correct?
Yeah.
So, again, this is maybe getting into the weeds. Have they looked at maybe reducing that retaining wall and adding a slope where people can sit on it and maybe even benching some seats and stuff, so that, because there's a gap there between the dugouts and the wall.
I think what they did was their best fit with the floodplain cut fill balance. So I think that they couldn't pull the field further east, if you will, to allow for that.
Okay,
So I mean, if we're gonna squeeze that thing in that way, I think that was kind of where we're at. What I was gonna maybe do a takeaway from tonight's meeting is it's gonna cost us a little bit, but is to have 3J modify this with what you guys are saying, maybe to bring back to you at a future meeting where we talk about just turning that into more of a leveled spot for the time being. So you could see what phase one, if you will, would look like as a green space field. Then we could just modify it as needed moving forward, if and ever there's a true ball field or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
We agree.
But I think because of the constraints of the wetland or the floodplain is why it was tucked in where it is.
Sure.
So I hope that's what you're looking
So when we're looking at this, the parking lot is higher than the field.
correct.
So this is
6 feet.
This is the terrain map, and Dave's accurate. He's 100% right. So you can see at that large dash line, that's the 100-year flood. Can't go down there too much.
Yeah, I understand it
So
all.
it's opposite, yeah.
Yeah, so if for everybody else here, if we're maxed out on cut fill, which means like when you design in a floodplain, you cannot add a single inch of dirt without taking it away and creating new floodplain, right? So basically, what I was hoping in that 35-foot dimension there, you could actually just build a steep slope where you could bench seating onto it. But if we're meeting the exact cut fill, we can't add any soil there.
Well, in the interim of what I've kind of heard, what my thoughts were is we would build that at say a 3-to-1 slope or a 4-to-1 kind of slope. And that would be a spot for concerts or whatever, as Paul was saying earlier, you could use that corner in the grass for seating.
Yeah.
And then you could have some sort of a, movie out there or something. So that's what I was saying is we would just slide that down, create as much level space as we can for soccer or whatever, and then just utilize that as a slope for now.
Okay.
Until there's ever a need down the road to excavate it further or something, but.
Yeah.
Isaac, go ahead.
I just want to make a point. We just went around and every single committee member agreed.
Yeah.
It's been 2.5 years.
Yes. I know. It is.
We never talked about this design. Honestly.
Well, I mean, I would like to see the road crossed, but I mean, if we want to disagree about something.
I think we'll take Michael's approach.
Minus 2 years.
Right, yeah, I know. Ooh, okay.
I just wanted to memorialize.
I love it. No, I love it. Jeanette, can I get your feedback?
Well, I'm not a member, so I mean, as far as feedback, I would say to me, what matters is what can be possible, and what can be done with the funding. So I'll leave. I mean, you guys have great ideas, and I think you're headed in the right direction.
Okay. All right. So let's leave that there. So level of service. So I do feel like that could be a big, long topic as well. I want to have it fully vetted. I know these are going long, but I feel like they're so important for us to be able to have these discussions and to have the whys on record, why we chose these things for the future. Um, do we want to end up having a second meeting for that we can fully address level of service? Is I want to make sure everyone's in agreement with that. If that ends up being what has to happen,
Yeah. Are we planning on doing that in May?
is that possible if we did it? Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it in May.
Okay. Would that still work if we ended up having a second meeting in May for level of service? No.
Didn't Dave say he's going?
I don't know about for MIG's behalf because they're scheduled to have this thing done by June. So
Okay.
So I will talk with Darcy
Okay.
and figure out what she needs from us to be complete. And I'm gonna guess, yeah, she wants that level of service. That said, we can schedule a meeting. We've done it before. We kind of send out a poll. People throw some dates out there. We make something work.
Okay.
So are we recommending doing another meeting in addition to the regular parks meeting?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Be next week, I think.
Yeah. I could potentially do this next week if we wanted to.
I'll send out
Okay.
polling information about
Okay.
and with some times that might work. Generally, to kind of get people's thoughts, since we're all more or less here, are we thinking evening still? Are we thinking afternoon? What are we?
Evening.
I need evenings.
Evenings.
Yeah.
Okay, evenings. We're talking 5 to 7-ish time periods.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all that gives me some good ideas about when to work.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. I know that these go long. I do appreciate it. But I do feel like this conversation is so important. So, that is why it's harder to move them along. Okay, but all right. So we've made that decision. Let's discuss Earth Day.
2 days.
Yes.
We are rocking it. Kara's done a great job with the solve.
JJ has done 90% of this work. So yes.
Been working hard.
Yes, she has.
Yeah, we've had a couple of hiccups, specifically getting the chargers in somewhat decent shape so that we can take pictures for our ribbon cutting on Saturday. But once again, our pinch hitter, Mike Sykes, made it happen. Literally on Monday, nothing was done. And I made some calls, and miraculously, there are people out there working, doing a fantastic job. Actually went out there, offered to get them coffee, and, thank them for really making that happen. So very excited about that. And Kara has worked hard on it. Jeff at the library has worked so hard on it, but so has Clem River PUD. Because let's just be frank, if it wasn't for Mike and Clem River PUD, we wouldn't be having a ribbon cutting today. So thank you, Mike, once again for the service that you do for our community.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I mean, it's really, really extraordinary. That being said, I've worked my butt off on this event. But we've gotten tremendous, we've gotten thousands and thousands of hits on Facebook. We've got ads in the spotlight. Jeff has done a great job in putting together little signs and cards. We've gotten just tremendous response from sponsors. I literally spent 8 hours total getting all the money. And it's because, it's that idea that this is something that's really important in the community. And I think too that, just to kind of backtrack for a minute, and this is also another fault of Mike Sykes. Years ago, when I came on this Parks Committee, I talked to Mike and said, "Oh, I've done a lot of promotions, doing radio station stuff and TV stuff." And he goes, "Well, you ever thought about doing a movie night?" I'm like, "Well, no, not really." And we talked about it. And for me, it was like, let's just kind of do a soft opening, and kind of see how it works. And we basically had a sheet on the gazebo, and we put a movie on there, and we kind of saw who showed up. And it started out small, which I think that's really a smart way to do things. And, last year we averaged 400 to 500 people a night. Brian has also been with us that whole way, so he can attest that we went from a sheet to an actual movie screen that we got a grant from Clem River PUD. And Dave's also been a big part of that. It's just been extraordinary to see it grow over these years. So I think as a result of that, that is why we've had such tremendous success with Earth Day. And the weather gods are in our favor. It is not going to rain. I'm just going to say, not going to rain. It's not raining tomorrow. It's not raining on Saturday. I know Dave is sweating because we need to get picnic tables and we need to make sure they don't sink into the ground. So we, Jeff and I were talking about that, maybe setting up in the parking lot, but we've got St. Helens Auto is going to have electric cars. The former mayor is bringing his Tesla. We've got a couple of other Teslas. Barlow Bikes is bringing electric bikes. We initially were going to give away one bike. We've decided to give away 2 electric bikes at this event. And, you know, Fred Meyer is giving us all the food for breakfast. Starbucks is giving us all the coffee. You know, grocery outlets giving us hot dogs and hamburgers enough to, I don't know, feed the second coming or something. And of course, Fultano's is giving us pizza. The police department have just totally stepped up. They're going to be grilling and also assisting with our Solve volunteers to keep them safe on the highway. So, I mean, it has just been a team effort, and I might have led the charge, but really without Mike, without Kara, without Jeff, and without, you know, everybody else, this would not happen. So I'm profoundly grateful for the support. I think it's going to be a fantastic event. Oh, and Paul, thank you. Paul designed our logo. He's going to be, I think we're going to make him Pizza Boy on Saturday because we need someone to get the pizza at 11:30. But yeah, so, you know, I'm just really happy that I'm able to be of service in this way, and hopefully not too annoying to people. But if so, you know, I still get it done. Thank you.
JJ, how would anybody else who doesn't know, how can they help on Saturday?
Oh, So, and just to back it up, so, you know, last year, and Brian and Karen and other folks that showed up, we weren't expecting 400 to 500 people showing up at movie night. So it was a challenge. But, you know, we had some people step up to help us get through the hot dog hamburger line, and, you know, it all worked out. So we need people to help because we're anticipating what? I bet 40 to 50 for the, why don't you talk about Solve?
So just the Solve cleanup, I so far have 25 people signed up. And we've already had people who are just like, well, I'm not quite sure how this link works and all of that. So I am anticipating at least double that. So currently we have 1 police officer we're going to have 2 locations. Everybody's meeting at Heritage Park, and then I will divvy people up. I'm going to try to get adults who come. They're going to be on the high school to Havlick cleanup area, and then families I'm going to put at Chapman Landing. We're going to have a police car on the highway with the lights going so people know to slow down for our safety.
I actually got some litter patrol signs from ODOT today too that I'm putting up out
Fantastic.
there along the highway. So
Thank you.
Well, let me just ask a quick, so I just think about this. So are we going to have a place where people can put their cans so that we can honor recycling on Earth Day, or how's that going to work? Well, if we're going to have trash cans, can we have like a place where people put their
trash cans for the facilities here or trash bags for the litter pickups?
No, we're talking about trash cans because we're going to have canned drinks and all of that. So will we be able to have separate areas where people can throw away garbage and cans in another for recycling?
I wasn't asked.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying we need to think about that.
Yeah, is there something that we can do now?
Well, I mean, if you could get your hands on a couple garbage cans and cut out the tops or something, I guess for the.
Still have that pallet down there at Public Works?
Okay, we'll work on that. But go ahead.
Okay, yes. So that's who I have for volunteers at this point. So if I would love to be able to have 2 more people who can assist the police officers who are there with kind of traffic control, getting people with vests. Actually, I'll be doing the vest and everything. I just would like to have 2 people at each location instead of 1. That would be, I think, the most
Be
ideal.
one of those.
Fantastic.
I will be there with the city truck, the lights. I've got
Great.
another box of bags from ODOT, the signs.
Great.
I'll help with that.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So then I just need 1 more person for Chapman Landing. It would be so wonderful if this was.
I believe that one of the officers is going to be at Chapman Landing too.
I'd like a second person if it was possible.
Okay.
To just be helping, because I'm picturing having 1 person kind of go like helping people down towards the river, and then 1 person. If we have 20 people at that site, we're going to need to be able to divvy them up and have 2 people in charge kind of managing the crowd.
And I've offered to help wherever you need it.
All right,
Meet me at 7 at Heritage Park.
we're gonna be up at 5.
7.
Yeah.
7. Okay. Yes, we are going to be up bright and early. So
Woo!
bring us caffeine.
Yes, much caffeine.
Okay. And then, yeah,
I have more.
go.
So the soft cleanup's going until 10:30. We'll have kind of a half-hour break. We're requiring all of the booths to set up before 10:30. And we're gonna have a lot of booths. You know, it's great. And so one of the things that I've always done, whether it's movie night or this, is that we've always had free booths for nonprofits. So we've got a lot of nonprofits that are gonna be showing up doing their thing, including the Scappoose Bay Watershed, Master Gardeners, you know, because I think that is really important. You know, they're an important part of this community and they need to be supported. So at 11 o'clock, the party begins. So we'll start out with the ukulele band from the library, which will be interesting. And then we have the decades starting at noon. We will be doing our Green Tech Talks, and we'll be announcing those more formally on Saturday itself, but we have experts from all different fields talking about ways you can go green to save green, including DIY your own solar panels. We've got PCC coming to talk about their new 3D printer. We've got Columbia River PUD talking about rebates and different ways to save money by being decent to the planet. And and food, free food. So at 11:30, the feed starts. So we will be doing that. We will let community clubs sell drinks for $1 so they can make some money. The Watts House, I told them they could sell lemonade for $1, but they want to do it for free, so that's fine. So we have free lemonade, free face painting, all this stuff going on. At 1 o'clock, we're doing the ribbon cutting for our new charging station, which took a very long time to happen. So I'm so grateful we're finally doing that. Mike is going to be cutting the ribbon along with a couple of other folks. And then at 2:30 is when we do the drawing for the electric bikes. And people have to be present to win. So we have designated boxes at all the booths so they can enter to win. They can only enter once. And then we will be drawing for that. But of course, plenty of other prizes from Means Nursery and other sponsors. So it's going to be a great time.
Okay. Questions about that?
Just want to point out one thing, just for clarity, the fountain will be off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's probably ideal.
You don't need any more water.
Right.
Well, in the past, it's been the day to start it up. But
Yeah.
this year, Jeff requested it off, which
Yeah, Jeff.
would air, and I just,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't want you guys to be like, hey, the fountain.
No.
It doesn't work.
No fountain, no
that's
fountain,
Okay.
no water on Saturday, period, except the Stumbies do drink out of the water bottle.
Okay. Paul, you were on our agenda.
Oh, I was placed in the 50-year committee. I've been attending almost every meeting, either in person or listening in. So I'm already up to speed. I'm taking Kim's spot, and I'll keep you guys abreast of what's happening. We have a meeting coming up shortly. We haven't actually had one in a while.
Okay.
So nothing else to report.
Okay. Really quick, Terry, Isaac, and I met with David Parker from the YMCA last night. So we are, one of the things that we discussed was how we could expand recreation in this area in a way that wouldn't necessarily be us all trying to run a million programs, because we all have so much extra free time. So the YMCA is, Terry and I just gave them a copy of like our biggest stakeholders. The next goal is going to be looking at what potential spaces the YMCA could use for some of these programs, and potentially trying to bring a teen center to this area, because I think a teen center would be amazing, and even better if it was run by the Y. I think it would be widely used. So we need someone who would be able to help Terry find these spaces, find point of contacts for these spaces, and do some of the legwork. So if we can kind of think about it, or if somebody just wants to email us, Terry, go ahead.
I wanted to get a meeting with Mike just to visit with him,
Oh, yeah.
because you've got a lot of knowledge.
Yes.
Next week sometime.
Okay, so that was it. I mean, I think it's exciting. I love the fact that they want to be here and they have ideas. whatever information we can kind of come together, they've built that pathway before.
Just add on to that is Megan and I are on the children daycare leadership for Columbia County, and we're really trying to develop daycare and childcare and development out here, and Columbia Economic Team as well. So I would like them, when you talk to YMCA, also mention that as potential to increase and grow. We're going to have a big program coming out.
Perfect. Okay. All right.
And just for everybody's knowledge, YMCA is already here.
Yes.
Program.
Yes. Yep. With the after school program. Yes. Brian?
Oh, I was gonna say I probably would have helped out with this solve event here, but we're doing Northwest Trail Alliance is doing solve event up on Rocky Point Road, so we're up there, walk all the way from the Highway 30 all the way up where our main gate is and a little ways past there.
Perfect.
Get up trash up the road up there, so.
Great.
We're gonna be up there.
We'll still let you come have pizza if you want afterwards.
We're running, I think we're starting like at 9 to 2 or something like that. So we're
Right.
kind of like
They sleep in.
almost the same time, but that's another option for folks. And I post that on Facebook too. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Briefly, really quick, the things we talked about with the why for development, because I know that was a topic. This year, they're looking to split the after-school program into 2 units. One would be K/3, one would be 4/6 to more appropriately fill the needs of the different aged children. That'll expand capacity to somewhere between 40 and 60, where right now it's at 30. They are interested in continuing operations in Scappoose. It's just a matter of getting the contacts and knowing who's here and continuing to build. So that's kind of where that conversation ended.
Yes.
That's why we're looking for those contacts.
Yes, yes, thank you.
That's what's coming this coming year for.
So that's one way that we can really help build recreation is just help establish these contacts, and then the Y can really take it from there. So, I mean, that's exciting, I think. Okay. You have something? Go ahead. Oh, all right. Well, let's call that a night. Great meeting, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stuff.
Yeah. Nice.